Hello, mate.
Hello.
Oh, is that all I'm getting? That's all I'm getting.
I thought I'd try coming from a different angle this week. No, it wasn't successful. Hello, mate.
Oh, that's all I'm getting. In that case...
Oh, Stella?
It's only a Pepsi Max, actually. I'm not into that shit these days.
No. How you been?
I'm really good, mate. Really good, thanks. How about you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Got a Hawaiian shirt on today. Sun's out, guns out.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Brilliant. So you're not doing Right Said Fred at the club this weekend, then?
No, not this week, mate. No, I'm just chilling this week. My wife's gone to see ABBA Voyage today, which is quite exciting.
Explain what that is.
It's an ABBA show without ABBA in it, but it's in a purpose-built venue somewhere up the east side of London. And
is that the one where they're all holograms?
Yeah, they're all avatars, aren't they, or holograms and things. Yeah, so it's an ABBA show without ABBA being there.
Probably a good thing, isn't it?
Basically, them siphoning all their money into their house without actually having to do anything. Brilliant.
That does actually sound quite obsessed. Didn't you say Bobby Dazzler went to that and he said it was absolutely amazing?
Everyone, yeah, he did. Everybody that's been to see ABBA Voyage has come back and saying it is absolutely brilliant. I think I've had enough ABBA in my lifetime, but arguably I'm told frequently by other people. But yeah, she's got to see that. So while the cat's away, the mice, I don't know, whatever that is.
That's funny because your wife's name is Cat. So while the cat's away, the Horace will play. There you go.
Brilliant. There we are. Puntastic. and what have you been up to?
I've been up to quite a lot, actually. I've been quite busy with work. But there is one thing I want to share, is that I had my bedroom decorated this week.
All right.
And I had a funny bloke come round. I'm not going to tell you what his name is because he might not want me to. But he's someone that, well, the original decorator that I normally hire couldn't do it this time. Really nice bloke called Rich. And he said, I can't do it, but I've got a mate that can. And this geezer came round. To be fair, he was a lovely bloke, but he was a bit of a space cadet. And when he turned up, he was smoking a fatty boom batty, right? And he lives in a van in this big old converted Mercedes. He's even got a chimney that comes out of it, so he can have a wood fire in the evenings. He's a sort of traveller type. He's got no fixed abode. He's quite funny.
Amazing.
But yeah, so he just dots around the country and he does sort of freelance decorating.
All right.
But I've got to tell you, Horace, I wasn't expecting this, but I was working downstairs in the studio, minding my own business. And at one point, I'd finished a bit of mixing and I took my headphones off and I heard this noise and it went something like this. Fudda-da-boom. And I thought, well, that's quite an unusual noise to hear. I don't normally hear that when I'm sitting in mixing. And I thought, oh, there's the decorator upstairs. What's going on? So I walked up the stairs and it was just silence. No roller. You know, you can usually hear the roller or his radio going. There was just nothing. Dead silence. And I thought, what the fuck's going on here? He's had one too big a toke on that fatty boom batty and he's passed out. So I opened my door and he's sitting there but he was sitting on the end of my bed, holding his right arm going, And I went, are you all right, mate? And he went, yeah, well, I am all right. I was just painting your light fitting and the power was still on and I electrocuted myself. So he was painting the light fitting, he unscrewed the light bulb, the stone bell end, and he started painting over the light fitting, and he went, fudda-da-boom, because he'd got an electric shock and dropped the brush.
Amazing.
Of all the funny things that you experienced, but it was all right. And then he said his arm hurt for a bit, but after that he had another spliff and carried on. It did a stand-up job, actually. My bedroom looks mint now. But yeah, I thought I'd share that.
I've actually done something similar to that, actually. But a long time ago, when one of my friends I used to work with, she was she wanted some new coving in a lounge, and I'd never put up coving before, and it was only the sort of the cheap polystyrene sort of coving, no, not the plaster or anything mad like that. And I remember taking the old coving off, and there was 2 cables sticking out the wall.
Oh no.
Well, obviously, there was actually 1 cable sticking out the wall with 2 cables inside it, you know?
Yeah.
And that was obviously for a light that had been there that was painted over or something like that wasn't there anymore. So I thought, wouldn't it be a good idea to touch those cables together and see what happened to test if it was live? and I did exactly that, and it was live, and it blew me off the ladder, and I ended up on my... Yeah, what an idiot.
You bellend. Not only am I because for those that don't know, I'm autistic. I'm high functioning autistic, which means I can handle most things. I can write a symphony and do that and mix that on a computer, but I am the worst DIYer in the known universe. And things like that really scare me, like cables. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near it. You lemon, you could have killed yourself.
I think your award to yourself of the worst DIYer in the universe, I think my wife would probably award that to me. So, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but you've done all right in your house. You've done your flooring. And did you do the flooring or did you pay some lemon to do that?
Someone did that. No, I didn't do that.
Oh.
No. I changed all of the plug sockets in the house to newer ones because they were all in a bit of a poor state when we first moved in. And so far, touch wood, everything's been all right.
Welcome to Backstage Pass, a podcast which attempts to pull back the curtain on the music industry with banter, comedy, and essentially two blokes having a laugh. With myself, James Maverick, and my good friend, Rob Newson, otherwise known as Roger the Horace. So following on from the previous episode, Horace, where we spoke very fondly of the bands that made up the Brighton scene, amongst other things, we wanted to just carry on in this episode and expand from the Brighton scene and discuss what we refer to as the UK bands, don't we?
Yeah.
Are bands that we sort of had quite a close affiliation with.
Oh, keep them coming, mate. Keep them coming.
Mate, do you remember? Right, so they're they sort of reformed-ish in a band called Sunk now, S-U-N-K, but they used to be, although the band that preceded that was a band called Snub from Bournemouth. And I've got to talk about Snub because they're absolutely fantastic guys. And out of probably all the bands outside the Brighton lot that I had the pleasure of touring with or sharing a stage with more than once, they were just brilliant. There was never any issue with Snub. They were a really good live band and they were really nice guys. So shout out to Choff, Martin, Simon, and you must forgive me because I don't know who your drummer is these days, but really good dudes and great that you're still flying the flag in Sunk. And a certain person who's on the microphone right now has seen Sunk recently, haven't you, mate?
I've seen Sunk. I've seen them twice in about the last 3 weeks. They're very good. And yeah, I'd like to re-emphasise the shout-outs to those because Choff has been he's been brilliant over the years that I've known him. I don't see him that often, but when I do see him, we have a good laugh. He's a good guy. They're all good guys. Martin Jeffrey, that's his name, bass player. He's a brilliant bass player. Really, really nice guy.
Goes absolutely ape live.
They're probably all listening to this thinking, they'll probably all send me a message going, thanks very much. People should go and see Sunk. They're very good.
An old Simon Smith on guitar.
Who's mad, but he's awesome as well. And then the other guy, the drummer at the moment is the original drummer in Snub was a guy called Vinny, wasn't it?
But he's not in Sunk, is he?
He's not in Sunk. No, he's given up drumming now. He's a security guard or something, or does something to do with fireplaces or something like that. But he was the one who had the fantastic drum sound on the Snub album that we heard when we used to when we first heard it in Filia, if you remember rightly, which first started off the merriment because I know that they'll agree with me, but the drum sound on the first Snub album wasn't the best drum sound in the world.
What did the kick drum remind you of, Rob?
It reminded me of a load of slippers slapping against a shoebox, which is
I'll never forget. I think I was there when you mentioned that. We were all rocking out to Snub, and then you turned to me and went, I mean, it's really good, but that kick drum sounds like an old slipper getting slapped against an old shoebox, doesn't it? And that was it. I was fucking gone. I was absolutely gone. Because you are right. I don't know what happened to that kick drum, but it's like a big kipper getting slapped up against a greasy iron pan. I don't.
It is like it reminds me of that fish slapping dance in Monty Python where he hits him in the face with that great big kipper.
But I tell you what, though, remember the album Memories from Richter that Snub did? I still listen to that record today.
It's great.
And there's a song on there called Man Made, which is absolutely fantastic. I was going apeshit in my car to that the other day, and I realised I was massively going too quick before I realised. There's something about Memories in Richter, that album, that instantly transports me back to all the times we had with Snub and playing gigs in Bournemouth. They were such good fun. But, mate, word on the street is that Maverick and Horace are going to go and infiltrate sunny Bournemouth next month, and we're going to go to a Sunk show and meet up with the Sunk boys, aren't we?
Yep.
We'll definitely have to cover that on the next episode. And actually, I've got a bit of I equal sentiments about Troff. He's a lovely bloke. He's always been a figure in the community. He's a promoter, isn't he? He's been a promoter for years. But I have got a couple of bones to pick with him. One is he nicked my pizza when we were on tour one day. So he owes me a large pepperoni pizza. And also, even though I don't drink alcohol anymore, that's not the point. But every solitary time I went with whoever band it was over the years that I went down to Bournemouth and bumped into Troff, he'd always go, yeah, you'll have to come down and visit. I'll get my own brew cider out and we'll have a good one. Never saw it. Never saw the cider. Ever. I don't know what he was on about.
He never, ever once lived up to that promise. He always used to say the same thing to everyone. He'd say, you provide whatever you were going to provide. We'll provide the homemade cider. That's what he used to say.
And it never materialised.
And he never, ever once. I still talk to him about it now. And he looks at me in bewilderment a lot of the time when I say it. Yeah.
Does he? Like he'd never said it. Wow.
And I said to him, mate, you never, ever once provided any cider. Well, we never saw any.
Selfish, if you ask me.
And I know you're not, but I'm still partial to a cider. I like a cider every now and then.
Yeah, well, God help us all when you have a drink.
And he owes us... He owes us about 25 gallons of it by now. He must do.
Maybe now we've called him out for his lack of cider in a public forum.
I'll tell him that next time I see him.
He'll sort it out.
We'll go down and see Sunk, and then what we'll do is we'll get Choff. I'll do an external live broadcast with him, and I'll get him to admit live on a microphone where this flaming cider actually is, because I've never bastard seen it.
We are, of course, totally joshing, and a shout out to Troff, who's an absolute legend.
Yeah,
and all the Snub now Sunk boys in Bournemouth. Another band I wanted to shout out was a band called Charger.
Oh yeah,
from Stoke. We did a tour with them and quite a few gigs, and I always got along really well with Jim Palmer, a fine guitarist. He was one of two of the Axemen in Charger. And he plays in Raging Speedall nowadays. And that might be worth mentioning, because just behind my head, on my rack in my little studio here, I do actually have a Gibson-style guitar, a Michael Kelly Patriot Custom, and it plays beautifully. And the reason it plays beautifully is because Mr. Jim Palmer these days is a very good guitar luthier, and I bought that guitar off him. And when it arrived, it was beautifully set up. I think it was still in tune when it arrived, which was quite extraordinary. So he obviously knows what he's doing. I haven't seen Jim for years. I always got on really well with him, and he's hilarious. So whatever you're doing, Jim, I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, they stayed in our house once, Charger.
Whose house?
Run's house. Sorry, that was good.
Hey!
That was great. That deserves a 10 on the old boo-ometer.
Wow.
No, they stayed in our house in Reading. They played somewhere and they came to stay with us in Reading. That was when the singer was a guy called Tim something.
Yeah, that's right.
Wasn't it? Yeah. And he had a beard. I can't remember what his name was. Tim something. I want to say Tim Minchin, but that's that singer from Australia with the ginger hair who looks like Newton Faulkner.
It's definitely not Tim.
Not him. It definitely wasn't him.
It'd be funny if it was.
Yeah, no, I don't remember that. But Charger were great, yeah. They were one of them bands that start playing and then you'd have to go and stand up the back of the room in case your head fell off.
Oh,
You'd be in the front row, like right next to them. They'd start up next to you and it'd be like somebody starting up a bulldozer or something, and you'd have to literally go and stand up the back because you go deaf in about 5 seconds flat. because they were so loud.
I'm pretty sure one tour with them and my ears have never been the same. I think my eardrums melted halfway through that tour. They were really loud. I've just thought of a really funny story as well. When we were on a tour bus, with Charger, it was an Undergroove tour. And that was the label we were all signed to, Undergroove. And we went on tour with this band called Minus from Iceland, who were the most gorgeous guys. Amazing live band. Really, really good. I got on famously with one of the guitarists, a guy called Frosty, one of the main songwriter. That is his real name, despite the fact he's from Iceland, but he spells it with an I. He's a lovely guy. I would love to catch up with him again and meet him again one day. He was so lovely, and interestingly, he's the cousin of the artist Björk, one of my favourite artists. So that was interesting talking to him, hanging out with him. I've never had so much fun on a tour bus, but a memory's just surfaced where Krummy, the lead singer of Minus, he was quite superstitious about things. And he had this one T-shirt that he'd always wear on stage. And then once he'd finished his performance, that T-shirt would go away. He refused to wash it, and then he put fresh clothes on. But every time he was due to go on, he'd put the same smelly shirt on. And I shit you not, I think it was 31 days we did. And on the last day, I remember, I've got it in my diary. On the last day, he got this shirt out of this bag. And not Jim, but the other guitarist who had ginger hair, and I'm sorry, his name escapes me. He was near the bag, and when Krummy opened the bag, he projectile vomited down the aisle of the coach because the smell of Crummy's T-shirt was so massively rancid, he couldn't deal with it, and the fug was too bad. I mean, honestly, this is why I don't. This is. This is why I'm not in a band anymore, and it's a young man's game, because I just couldn't put up with that shit anymore, but it's funny at the time.
I can only imagine what that must have smelt like after 31 days.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been on a bus where people have stage clothes, and they think that, obviously, like you say, if you've got full stage clothes and you can't get to a laundrette every single day to wash them afterwards, you have to hang them up in the bus or in the trailer.
Yeah.
And after 31 days, that must have been the most horrendous smell ever. And to make somebody projectile vomit is
he didn't do it on purpose. He was just in nose shot of the fog that erupted from the bag, and it was too much for him.
He was in the vicinity.
Yeah, his nasal cavities hit red alert straight away then. Oh, mate, that was funny.
Absolutely brilliant, mate.
But actually, while I'm talking about Undergroove Records, I've got to give a shout out to a very good man, Mr. Darren Sadler, who was our manager and who started up Undergroove Records. He sent us a really nice message, and he listened to the first episode of the podcast, and he said it was a lot of fun. He enjoyed listening to it, and I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Sadler, because all these stories we're talking about and all those wonderful memories I've got of the hilarious times and heroes I've met and just the characters I've met and the times I had playing music in a band. I'm not sure I would have had a lot of those experiences were it not for him. And I don't even know how he did it, really. He was editing Rock Sound Mag, co-editing Rock Sound Mag, and doing that label all at the same time. I've no idea how he had the time to do any of it, but he did, and he was a legend, and he's a jolly nice bloke. So shout out to you, Mr. Sadler. But I can't go off this topic without calling him his nickname. And back in the day, we used to refer to him as Secret Sadler, because he was always like, he was.
What was it? I don't know. Before you carry on with that, I'll shout him out because I saw him about 2 months ago. He was at the Head Swim show at Camden Underworld. Head Swim did a Reformation show, but that's another story. But he was there, and we had a chat there. So he's a very nice guy. Yeah, very nice chap.
He is, mate. And we used to call him Secret Sadler because he was always sort of sloping off round the corner with a roll-up stuck to his top lip, getting on his mobile phone, doing some dodgy deals. But of course, he wasn't doing some dodgy deals. He was just doing his job and probably getting a breather from the cretinism and deal knot status. And we were probably just doing his head in because we were a bunch of stoned lemons. That's what he was doing. He was trying to survive the carnage, mate, probably.
Yeah.
But anyway, we used to call him Secret City, which used to make him laugh. Which so I'm hoping he won't mind if I mention that. But nowadays, I think he's colloquially known as the Daddler because he had a family and he's got
Brilliant.
I think he's got 3 girls, isn't he? And anyway, I couldn't help myself. I had to give a shout out to Darren. I haven't seen him for many years, and I'd love to bump into him again one day.
He put out one of my favourite records of all time, which is the Abominable Iron Sloth, which is on Undergroove as well. I really like that record. That's a record to check out for anybody that wants something decent to check out. Really good sludge rock record. It's basically Will Haven with a different singer, but it's called The Abominable Iron Sloth.
There you go. There's a mini Roger the Horace album review where you didn't slag it off. Fuck me, I'm going to fall out my chair.
No, I like that record, and it's got the opening track is called Hat. It's got all the song. You remember when people went through that period of giving song titles sentences?
Yeah, all started by Eddie Vedder on the Pearl Jam Versus record with elderly woman behind a counter in a small town, right?
Yeah, that annoyed me that they did that. They didn't need to do that.
That annoyed you, did it?
It annoyed me because that's my favourite Pearl Jam record.
Oh well, if it annoyed you, don't worry about it. We'll never listen to it again. Yeah.
I did get into a conversation with somebody about that the other day, about saying, they've moved on from that. It's like, well, that was the best one. So that's my favourite one. I didn't think Vitology was a patch on that one.
As a second Roger the Horace mini album review, fuck me, this is golden. This. Sorry, what were you saying about this band?
Sorry, I was just saying that. Let's see, I've got it here. Just happened to have it nearby, just in case it needs to go on the stereo. So, I was saying that the Abominable Iron Sloth, all the song titles on the record are all sentences. Like when people thought that was a cool thing to do. First song's called Hats Made of Veal and That New Car Scent, which is ridiculous, but good record to check out. It's on Discogs for about 41 to 48 pence, I think. So knock yourself out, kids.
Yeah, man.
Good album, that. Check out Undergroove recordings on Discogs because Darren did put some good stuff out on that label.
He certainly did, and he's involved in 2 magazines, isn't he? Iron Fist and what's the other one?
Is it Metalhead, I think?
Oh yeah, Metalhead and Iron Fist. There you go.
Metalhead's his own magazine, and it's really good.
So there's one last band. I hope you don't mind me keep mentioning these bands, but there's another band that's quite close to my heart. Actually, is Medulla Nocte. They made such a delightful racket, and Paul Catton, the vocalist, shout out to him. He's doing a vocal project now called Dead Sheeran. I mean, the name itself is hilarious, and that's a lot of fun, and the lyrics are brilliant. And that's sort of a one-man band that he does nowadays. But I always really got on well with Paul and Jammer, the absolute powerhouse of a drummer, an extraordinary drummer, and sadly he passed away, didn't he, some years ago, which is really sad because he was a good guy. He was.
I remember hearing Medulla Nocte's album the first time I heard it, which was the one with the...
Is that Dying from the Inside?
Yeah, the one that's got a heart with nails through it on the front and a sort of big, looks like a medical... It looks a bit like Carcass record sleeve.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that. And I think there's a song on that called As the Penny Dropped or something like that, which is the one that was on... There you go, I'm doing this from memory. This was on... That was on load of free CDs on the front of magazines when that was a thing.
Mm.
And I remember hearing it and thinking, that's a little bit too much for me. But his vocals are quite, they're quite an acquired taste, aren't they?
They're extraordinary.
Yeah.
And Matt did a tour with Medulla, and they're one thing to experience on CD, whole different ballgame live. They were so powerful live. It was unreal.
Mm.
And Paul, of course, did guest vocals on a Matter song on the Black Leg record, and him and Jammer came down to Philly Studios that day, and they were so much fun. Jammer was brilliant. He was listening to some of the playback of the Matter record, and all he could say was, "That's having it, man. That's having it. Hey, that's having it." I can't do accents, but it was brilliant. It was very complimentary, and they were jolly nice guys.
I remember them playing in. I think I've definitely seen them play because I remember them because Jammer was quite a big chap, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And they used to. He was lovely, and they used to sit him on his drum stool and then push his kit around him when they used to set up.
Well, it's because he had a huge kit on a rack. It was just easier to move it on the rack.
Yeah, and he couldn't really get in and out from behind it very easily once it was set in there. But I remember, I'm sure they played in a free butt once or somewhere like that.
They did, yeah.
And I was at that, and I remember he was literally sitting in the fireplace because they used to have a fireplace, didn't they, behind the drummer, and he was sitting.
That was you've made it sound massively derogatory. That wasn't just Jammer's experience. Like any fucking drummer ever that played the free butt was basically their arse was hanging out the fire exit because it was fucking tiny.
I know. I know. I just remember I can see him sitting in the fireplace, and we all had to push the drum kit round him while he was sat in the fireplace, like to.
The
so
thing
he could
is,
play
the
it.
stage was so small. If your kit was too wide, you had to do that because you couldn't get round. It was ridiculous.
That's it. But I remember him playing. I remember him going absolutely berserk. I remember
he was an absolutely fantastic drummer. He was.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. And he came out afterwards, and he came out and said that we were all talking to him outside. He was a lovely guy. He really was. I was really sad when I heard that something had happened to him. I think something.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's very sad.
You know, R.I.P. Jammer. He was a good guy.
R.I.P. Jammer. Yeah.
I got a funny story about Medulla. It was something I'll never forget. I think it's one of the most genius sort of collaborations of comedy that a band have ever done that I've ever seen. Oh, what was the venue? I'm really going to kick myself. Or maybe the venue's not important. I can't remember. It was a really big venue, and this woman turned up to do the sound, and she was very lovely and very professional and knew what she was doing. And I can't help but laugh about this, but Medulla must have planned this, or it must have been something that they'd done before. But she said, just do your stuff, play a song. So they played a song, and, all their songs had high gain guitar in them.
Yeah.
So they finished a couple of songs, and this lovely woman on the desk said, is there any clean guitar in any of your songs? Because I'm going to need to do a little separate mix for the clean guitar. And they went, oh, yeah, there is, yeah. And she went, okay, can you play this song with the clean guitar? And I went, yeah, okay. Now, one of the songs on Dying from the Inside is an absolute killer of a tune called The Nervous Reaction. It's my favourite song by that band. It's like 4 minutes of massive, high gain guitar, total brutality. And then right at the end, there's this little ring of clean guitar. That's on the record. So they played that song, going absolutely ballistic for about 4 minutes. She's sitting there going, what? Where's this fucking clean guitar? And then right at the end, they go, and she just sort of put her head in her hands, shook her head and fucked off out the back door. But she was laughing. It was absolutely brilliant. And everyone was falling about laughing. They were such good fun. That was really funny. I'll never forget that.
Brilliant.
So, back in the very first episode of Backstage Pass, we established the fact that myself and Roger the Horace do have lofty opinions when it comes to music. And this has been only further embellished by the regular podcast feature of Roger the Horace's album review. But for this episode, we thought we might try something slightly different and featuring a certain voice of authority.
Roger the Horace's Absolute Bangers.
So what I wanted to try and do with this little part is to bring some songs to people's attention that they might not have heard, expect them to go straight out and listen to.
Expect that, would you?
Lovely. I'm putting a Spotify playlist together of all of these songs as I go along. So I thought to start with, I'll choose 3 songs, and I know you know them all. So I know you'll know how they'll go. It's a shame people can't actually hear them before we talk about them, but it is what it is. So,
and just to be clear for the listeners, I have no idea which songs Horace has picked, and I am sitting here with great anticipation.
We're doing this live. We're cooking with gas.
That hopefully Horace hasn't plumbed in.
Well, I'm going in hard with my first choice. I'm going to do 3 rock ones this week.
Hopefully it won't be natural rich egg gas either. It'll just be normal gas.
Lovely. Thanks very much. We'll elaborate on the rich egg jokes later on down the road. For now, my first choice for the Roger the Horace's Absolute Bangers playlist is Richard Marx.
Yes! Get in! I think I might know which song you're going with. This is going to be obsessed.
I thought I might start at the top and I can't really go any higher, but might actually be my favourite rock song of all time.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it probably is.
Don't keep me in suspense. Go on.
Well, I'll tell everyone what it is first. So for those people that do know Richard Marx, the song that I'm going to put on my playlist is Wait for the Sunrise.
Oh, get in. That is obsessed, that tune, mate. That gets my seal of approval.
Which is an absolute banger. And Richard Marx's career, I'm sure people know that he got bigger for ballads than he did for any of the sort of hard, snub-nosed stuff that he recorded, which Wait for the Sunrise is pretty much... If you really close your eyes, it could actually be Wasp playing that song. It's that good. It's on Richard Marx's second album, which still I say is the best title for a second album anyone's ever come up with, which is Repeat Offender. Now, how good is that?
It's amazing.
And he's not an offender at all.
Yeah, but what about the album cover?
I haven't even... this is a whole episode. The cover of that record is absolutely outstanding. He has the tightest trousers that I've ever seen anybody wear on a record sleeve. He also has a massive 1989 mullet, a haircut, and he's just standing... I've got the vinyl of that. I'm going to go and look at it in a minute. Just sit and stare at it for an hour. I've got the vinyl. I had to get the vinyl when I saw that cover. You know the cover I mean, don't you?
Mate, it's obsessed.
He's just standing there looking like he's about to go and get into a helicopter in like a sort of Spanish bodega sort of setting, just holding this pole, pulling out this pose that's absolutely ridiculous. And his jeans are so tight that there's no way he could put them on standing up. He'd have had to put them on laying down. 100%. And that album, it does have Right Here Waiting on it, which is obviously the big ballad that everyone remembers, and then got absolutely huge. But
good tune.
Tucked away at the end of that album, that's another part of it that's insane. It's right at the end as well, when people probably would have given up listening.
Always leave them wanting more, Horace.
Track 11 on that album is Wait for the Sunrise, and it is absolutely brilliant. Really good rock song, really good lyrics, song content. And I didn't know this until today, but I looked up who plays the instruments on that. And here
we go.
It's Toto.
Yeah.
It's pretty much Toto that play the whole thing.
It's a smorgasbord of the best 80s session players there is.
Exactly right. Exactly. So it was because there's, I don't know if anyone else feels this. Sometimes there's a guitar solo in a song that is a variant on the vocal melody that you can sing.
Yeah.
And I know this, and it's, you and I both know, because we're both big Air performers. If people haven't seen us when we were, perhaps slightly influenced by substances and so forth, there's nothing like a good air drum or a good air guitar to a song. And Wait for the Sunrise has all these drum breaks through it, and it also has a guitar solo that you can air guitar and you can sing, because it's
I've got the solo in my head playing now. It's amazing. Yeah. I remembered it.
It's that, isn't it? And it's just one of them solos that's just amazing. And it's a fantastic song. And it's such a waste where it is on the record. It needs to be in people's playlists. They need to play it in their car, especially in this weather. I've spent nights in my house where I've just listened to that song on repeat for about 3 hours because it's so good.
You get sick of it though.
No, it's such a great tune.
Albums like that are so precious to me. I can't keep listening. They're sort of listens once a year because they're too good. I don't want to get bored of it.
Oh, mate. That's why I'm doing the Spotify list, because
I just want to offer my thoughts. I mean, we're both a lover of that record.
Please do. You know it well.
Absolute genius, that record. And I think this is great because we keep threatening on this podcast we're going to talk about 80s stuff, and we haven't yet because we're still talking about all these memories. There is something about that record and some of the songs on it that instantly transport me back to a different time. when I was younger. The production is unbelievable. It's second to none. Like you say, he's got a smorgasbord of the best, most sought-after session players of the 80s. And Richard Marx himself, mate, he's like everyone thinks of Richard Marx with his fluffy, coiffured mullet from the 80s, looking like a prized loaf of bread stuck on his head. Like you say, those hilarious jeans, like his meat and two veg are going to explode out at any moment. People probably assume he's just a bit of an 80s poser with a good voice. But, mate, he's not. He's much more than that. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He wrote nearly all the songs himself. And if you go back and watch some old Richard Marx live stuff from back in the day, he's such a brilliant musician. He's like playing the guitar. He's a great multi-instrumentalist, a great pianist. Well, he doesn't just croon it, does he? He's a really good guitarist. His bands are great. He was just fantastic. Yeah. And what a voice as well. What a voice.
And that album is just, I mean, it is quite hilarious looking at the amount of people that were involved in that album because there's about 150. But
yeah, but do you know what? They wouldn't have all been involved in it had he not been a really decent, credible musician and an artist, though, would they? Bigging up his mullet, mate.
Yeah. And he wrote it all. Like you said, he didn't co-write any of that album. He wrote it all himself. So it's absolutely amazing.
That's it.
But yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Richard Marx because he has been, again, in reference to earlier episodes on the podcast, when I explained how your and my friendship started to blossom back in the day, was when I mentioned Tears for Fears at a gig and you were so excited. And obviously you meet someone with a similar music taste, you end up having a bond there. On one of the records we've always talked about over the years that we've unanimously loved is that one. So I am totally delighted that you brought Wait for the Sunrise and Repeat Offender to the pod because I love that record.
There's just one horrible song on it, which is that track 7, Real World, which is terrible. But other than that, there's one terrible song on it. I don't know what they were doing with that, but seriously, people need to go and find Wait for the Sunrise and just listen to that track. That's my first pick for my list.
All I can say in defence of your choice is that whole record is absolutely obsessed and you must go out and listen to it because I'm so fucking passionate about Richard Marx and that album. It's so obsessed.
I know people that haven't seen the cover, obviously can't. No, well, everyone needs to go and look at the cover as well, just to check that out.
So this is now officially an instruction. This is life coaching advice from the Backstage Pass podcast to sort out your life. Take out your smartphone, right this instant, and type in Richard Marx, M-A-R-X, Richard Marx, Repeat Offender. Check out that album cover. It will sort your day right out.
Please go and look at the cover and send us in comments about what you think he's looking at. Because he's looking off camera and he's looking at something passionately, and I reckon he's looking at about 1,000 women, and I reckon that they all just lined up ready to take off his trousers after that shoot's finished.
That's what you think he's doing?
Yeah, I reckon that's what there's all these women there. It's probably a sandwich van or something like that. It's probably...
So after all that, he's just looking at a hot dog van thinking, I wonder if I should have onions today.
He's probably trying to work out how much money he's spending on the catering or something like that. Anyway.
Wouldn't it be outrageous if I contacted Richard Marx's agent and got him on the show and asked him that question about what were you looking at?
I would definitely ask him that, and I would ask him how long did it take to put those trousers on, and did you manage to get them off without medical intervention?
Of all the questions you could ask an established artist with an amazing, glittering career like Richard Marx, he comes on a crap podcast done by two lemons in England, and the first question they ask is, how long did it take you to get your jeans on the cover of Repeat Offender? I would be so pleased if that actually happened.
I would 100% ask him that without doubt, and he'd probably have a laugh and answer it.
Oh, mate!
But the photograph was taken by somebody called E.J. Camp, so I don't know whether he's. That's true.
No pun intended.
Well, E.J. Camp. So there we are. If EJ Camp's listening, perhaps EJ Camp would like to get in touch with us and tell us if those trousers are actually real or whether they're just paint.
Or glued on.
Or glued on, yeah. Or they're actually a couple of sleeves. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right.
I'm delighted with that choice. What's number 2?
I'm going number 2. I'm staying on rock for these 3. So number 2, I thought long and hard about this, but I'm going with Go by Pearl Jam.
Oh, mate.
Sorry.
Oh, mate. I nearly fell out my chair.
And the reason I'm going with Go is because it holds very fond memories for me, Go, because going back to what we were just saying, not only is it brilliant as well, and I'll talk about that briefly in a second, but it's one of the first songs I ever remember us sharing time listening to when back in the old days, and and still to this day, I've never seen anybody air drum the entire song perfectly, because, as we all know, Pearl Jam's biggest mistake in their career was losing Dave Abruzzese as a drummer, because, I'm sorry, but I've had this conversation with many people through the years that Pearl Jam got a huge kick up the backside when Versus came out and went into proper full-on mode, and then it didn't stay like that. They just, the Vitology, which everyone says is great, it isn't. I'm sorry, but I don't think it is. It's very patchy, and it's not Versus. Versus is a great record. And Go, the best bit I like about Go is it starts off really quiet. It's got that first 30 seconds of sort of them sort of messing about and Dave Abruzzese doing that little beat. And then most people turn their volumes up on that. I reckon this is why they did it. I thought this today. I reckon people turn up their volumes on their record player or their wireless or whatever device they were listening to on when that came out in 1993, I think. Yeah, 93, I'm sure it was. And then you turn it up and then he does the 4 count in and the song properly starts, and then it's twice as loud as you need it and you have to turn it down. And it's brilliant. And it's got the most amazing drumming in it for their songs. And I need to say no more because you know all about the drumming because you know it off by heart, don't you?
So, yeah, so the perfect air drumming, I think Rob's referring to, I'm guilty of, because I remember whenever we used to listen to that, I'd always do the air drumming. He'd always get excited, go, do that feel at the end, go. Because I'm obsessed with Dave Abruzzese. I couldn't agree more. But what can we say about that record? Jesus H. Christ. But Brendan O'Brien produced and mixed that, and it is extraordinary. And I think Go, for me, has always stood out. And there's actually a couple of reasons, and I've got to chime in about this. I only recently found out, as we all know, Dave Abruzzese, outstanding drummer. He brought so much flair and, like you say, the angst and the sort of drive that they had, the energy on Versus. And he played the drums on Vitalogy as well. But
did he?
Like you say, I think he did.
Oh, right.
I think they reached their zenith on the Versus record. But I only found out recently that he wrote that song. Dave Abruzzese wrote Go, or he wrote the majority of it.
Yeah.
The other reason I love Go is it's the... Brendan O'Brien, I think, did an amazing production job on that record, because not only does the album keep the flavour of the album as the songs go on, each song has its own individual mix under that umbrella, if you like, which is quite a difficult thing to do. And I'm sure you'll agree, the snare production on Go is absolutely outrageous. And it's a different snare production to all the other songs. And it's because Dave Abruzzese is using a snare drum by an Australian company called Brady, and he's using something called a Brady Jarrah block. And when I was in Matter, I tried to get that particular Brady snare drum.
Wow.
Until I found out how much they cost and nearly had an heart attack. So that was never going to happen. But yeah, that song is just phenomenal, and his drumming in that, oh mate, it's mind blowing, isn't it? Yeah. So brilliant. What else can you say about that song? It's glorious. Absolutely.
Versus for me is still my favourite Pearl Jam record. They're never going to beat Versus for me, because Versus was they put out a 10 and I thought 10 was all right. I didn't blow me away, and Jeremy was on MTV every 5 minutes, and I liked those songs and I thought it was good. But then Versus is such a great big punch in the face, And I know they were all living in their vans in the cold weather, and that's why it was the way it was, because they were all pissed off and fed up and, nothing was going right. But then I think that came out in the record.
Great art from suffering, perhaps.
Obviously, Go's the first, for those people that don't, there can't be people listening to this that have never heard Verses by Pearl Jam. If you haven't, then shame on you. Go and track down a copy of Verses by Pearl Jam and please listen to that record all the way through. Go's the first track. Aptly named as well, because they really do. They go, don't they?
They do go for
they
it.
do
Yeah,
go
exactly.
But then before I forget, the bit I also really like is the end of Go into Animal.
I still think it's up for debate, though, which album's the strongest out of 10 and Verses. I don't know. I was obsessed with Pearl Jam when I was younger, because, funnily enough, I'd never heard them before. I went round my mate Damien's house, kid I used to go to school with.
Damien Down 112.
The web-footed barking bollocks. That's a throwback. I'm keeping that in. I don't care if no one gets that reference. I'm having it.
Little nod to Peter Cook there. God rest his soul.
Oh, mate. I mean, the term comedy genius is bandied around way too often these days, right? But Peter Cook, man, the OG bona fide comedy genius. There's no doubt in that. What a legend he was. My favourite ever comedian. R.I.P. Peter Cook.
Oh, mate, yeah.
Where was I? Yeah, I went round my mate Damien's house, and he was playing the 10 CD by Pearl Jam. And I must admit, for a good few weeks, I didn't like it, because it was a sound that I was listening to Metallica and all the glam rock and Iron Maiden and stuff, and it was a sound that I wasn't used to. But when that album got its claws into you, oh my God. I think the penny dropped once when I was, what was I doing? My mate came around my house, and he'd just been dumped by his girlfriend, like you do when you're a teenager. And we were wistfully looking out the window, and he was all upset, and we were looking out at a field, and Oceans came on from that record, with the timpanis and that glorious tune. And I was just transported to somewhere else, and that was it. After that, I was obsessed with that record. I don't know. And I don't know whether... I think we all place personal value upon albums, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think there's a big debate as to whether one is greater than the other. But I do genuinely agree with you that Versus is a great, and great as in exceptional, it's a classic album. But for me, 10 will always be more special because of what was going on in my life at the time. And I don't think you can argue, though, that the collection of songs on 10 are absolutely extraordinary when you consider how that album came to be made. Some story about all the songs were written and they couldn't find a vocalist, and Eddie was a local surfer and he came in and he just did all the vocals on it. And it's almost like sometimes in musical history, you get these happy accidents where all the stars seem to align in the sky and something incredible is made. And I think that was the case with 10. I'm more annoyed the fact that they fired Dave Abruzes because, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But yeah, I was absolutely gutted when he left the band. And like you say, they had so much energy when he was playing. And then Jack Irons joined. And it all got a bit ploddy and Neil Young-y, didn't it? And it was just nothing like Versus. They lost that sort of energy that they had.
Yep. He was a powerhouse, that guy. And, perhaps they had trouble pronouncing his name. Perhaps that's why they got rid of him.
Maybe.
We're just going to call you Dave. Is that all right? Yeah. Okay.
I went to see Pearl Jam at Brixton Academy when Dave Abruzes was playing. One of the most incredible gigs, the most amazing drumming performances I've ever seen. I'll never forget it.
I never saw him, I don't think. I can't even think if I have seen them. I daren't go and see them now because they play for like 7 hours and they play about 3 songs that I like. I can't imagine Pearl Jam playing Rearview Mirror like now and it being any good. I bet it'd be a bit of a disappointment. I know people get older and they lose the the fire and whatever else have you. But it's like the Foo Fighters playing Monkey Wrench, which when Monkey Wrench came out, Monkey Wrench is a great song. That's not in my list yet.
It's great, yeah.
But that is a great song.
Brilliant.
And now they turn it into a big sing-along clappy thing. And it's like,
right,
yeah, all right. But I remember when Monkey Wrench came out, that song was, that used to make me want to smash people about, that song when I first heard it.
I think it happens when you get when you get changing members. So when Matt Cameron joined Pearl Jam, have you seen the way they play even flow these days? They play it about 3 times the speed.
No.
And it's really weird.
Oh, no, I've not.
It's almost like a thrash number. It's bizarre. I don't get it.
I did see Audio Slave doing Soundgarden songs as well, and that's not very good. Chris Cornell can't do Rage Against the Machine songs for me. As good a singer as he is, as nice as his cardigans used to be when he used to play, he can't. He used to wear a cardigan sometimes, didn't he?
I'm sorry. I'm about to leave the studio. I can't have you dissing Cornell. Cornell is gone.
I'm not dissing him. He was a great singer, but he did used to wear the odd cardigan.
You're referring to the Jules Holland appearance when he wore that grey cardigan. But he's Cornell. If anyone can wear a Dobber grey cardigan, it can get away with it. It's him.
He looked like Frank Boff from bloody Grandstand when he was that on.
Frank Boff! Wasn't he the opposite of... Frank Boff! Wasn't Frank Boff the old presenter on Grandstand, and he had the Dobber V-neck?
Yeah, and he got into real hot water, didn't he? He got into real trouble, he did, old Frank Boff. You remember that? You might have to go and have a lay down.
Oh my God, I think I've just blown a gasket. What trouble did Frank Boff get into?
Oh, he was famous. He was ousted. People that can Google it. He was ousted. He was the Mr. Squeaky Clean breakfast TV sports presenter, and then he was busted in a massive. He went on a massive women and drugs binge, and it was in the papers. Yeah, he went berserk.
Did he just get sick of it with he ripped off his cardigan and went berserk?
It wasn't. I don't want to.
He was desperate to go and party.
And he's called Frank Boff, and I never thought of that before.
Because it's doubly funny, because for those that don't realise, Boff is a local colloquialism around where we're from, which means bad body odour. Like you have boffy armpits. I mean, it was spelt B-O-U-G-H, but it's still pronounced Boff. Imagine walking around being called Frank Boff. You'd never get a job. Imagine being a doctor's surgery and the computer voice goes off. Frank Boff to room 3. I'd fucking die. I would have to leave the waiting room. There's no way. Is Frank Boff still alive? Oh, bless him.
No, he's not. He's dead, I think. No.
Horace is crying.
I am crying. I'm gonna have to get a Frank Boff t-shirt made up, I think. I'm going to do a new range of... I think he got back in the public eye. I can't believe this is... Hey, listeners, this is the only podcast where we've gone from Pearl Jam to Frank Boff.
Frank Boff. How the hell did we get to Frank... Oh, it was
Chris Cornell's cardigan.
God himself's cardigan.
It's a good name for a band. Yeah, he's passed away now, mate. He died in 2020, 87.
Who, Cornell or Boff?
No, Boff. Maybe we should just do a whole podcast on Frank Boff.
I can't deal with it. I've totally gone, Horace.
The News of the World revealed famously in 1988 remember the News of the World, that Frank Boff had taken cocaine and worn lingerie at parties with prostitutes. There you go. He'd also been involved in a dungeon orgy.
And you know what?
So he enjoyed the 80s, if nothing else.
All the while he was doing that, he reeked of Boff. There you are.
Brilliant. Yeah, he's sadly passed away, but I feel that he ought to be on a shirt at least.
Oh, anyway, God, mate, I need a towel. I'm sweating here. I'm absolutely gone.
Do you want a minute break? I wonder what the neighbours think of me. They probably think I'm having a heart attack in here.
I don't care.
Brilliant.
Right, we've taken a little breather after that. I wasn't expecting all that madness. But what have you got lined up for track 3, Horace?
Right. I don't know how I'm going to pull this round from Frank Boff, but track 3 is going to be a band. Stop it. A band called Urge Overkill. Who I don't think you're really familiar with them.
Do you know what? I've heard of Urge Overkill, but I don't recall that I've ever actually heard their music before.
Okay, it all seems a little bit. It seems a bit lackluster. You not knowing the song, but anyway.
You'll have to guide me through it with the Horace expertise.
I'll guide you through it. So, Urge Overkill have been famous for. They're the band that sang. They sang "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon," which is a Neil Diamond song in Pulp Fiction. So it's the song that Uma Thurman. Is it? Does she stick all the heroin up her nose when that song's playing in the film? Is that what she's doing?
Yeah, that's right. She mistakenly snorts a pile of wag.
So they did a cover of that song on an EP of theirs, and Quentin Tarantino, who every time you see him in an interview looks like he would probably bite your head off. He chooses. Well, he always looks like he's troubled about something every time.
It's because he's a complete and utter loon burger. That's why.
Yeah. So, but he has put some great soundtracks together for his films, and I know he used to do. He compiles most of the soundtracks himself.
He does
by stuff that he hears around with that other guy that I can't remember. Robert, what's the other guy that he does it with? I think he compiles a lot of the soundtracks with Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, yes, I know that.
He did Desperado, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and he does Mariachi stuff. Urge Overkill did Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. It's a Neil Diamond song. And that subsequently got them signed to Geffen. So for those of you that remember the 90s, Geffen Records, which I think, what did they put out? They put out Appetite for Destruction at the end of the 80s, didn't they? And that
Pump by Aerosmith, cool record.
Yeah, Aerosmith, there you go. And Nevermind came out on Geffen. And Geffen used to get, if a band was on Geffen, you kind of knew they were going to be good. 93, they signed a band who used to be on Touch and Go, which is one of those American underground labels, and that was Urge Overkill. And Urge Overkill recorded an amazing record in 1993 called Saturation, which was they were a sort of snub-nosed punk band. Before they signed to Geffen, and they decided to try and record a record for Geffen that was a deliberate attempt to be a hit. And it was called Saturation because they wanted to saturate the market with it. Okay. And it's just brilliant. It's such a good record. And Jack Black from Tenacious D always refers to that record in interviews that he does, because it's like an untapped record that a lot of people don't know has come out. Anyway, the first track on the record is called Sister Havana, and the video for that was on MTV at the time, and the people in the band are all characters. The drummer in the band was on heroin, so he was mad, right? And he's dead, right? He's called Blackie Onassis, right? Is in the band. They've got this whole persona in their videos. It's like a spy film. So they, like the Beastie Boys did with Sabotage when they do that sort of spy film credits Mickey take where they're all running around Nathan Wind and they've all got that, that, remember that?
It's brilliant, yeah.
Urge Overkill did that, but they were doing it for real. So not only is the whole album amazing, it's such a summer radio rock record. It's really good. It's so well written. It's also it's in the Air Drum Club because the drummer was just a little bit sloppy, and everything else on the record is slick and as you like, but the drumming is just a little bit sloppy, but it gives it a character.
Yeah, so he's not quantized or snapped to the grid, right?
No, the two guys in the band, the front men of the band, the guitarists, they both had long hair and sunglasses and looked like they've come out of a 60s film with sort of flares, and they had suits as well. And the drummer looks like he's come from Mexico, like he's got short black hair, a moustache, and he used to play in a waistcoat with these big black gloves. And if you watch the Sister Havana video, you'll see what I mean. It's all like them driving around sort of...
Mate, I feel like a total lemon. I know of the band. I've never heard of this record, but I'm definitely going to go and check it out when we finish recording.
Please do. Urge Overkill. The album is Saturation, and I'm going to go with Sister Havana because it's got an amazing chorus. And when you see the drummer playing, you'll understand what I mean. He was absolutely mad. He's like a sort of Keith Moon, basically, in the band. But
right.
The production on the record it was produced by the Butcher Brothers, who were like a duo that did films and did all sorts at the time. And they weren't the sort of style that you'd expect that band to go and record with, but it's so well produced. It has like possibly one of the best guitar tones you'll ever hear on a record. And it just disappeared. So it's like it came out, it was reviewed in Kerrang, bong. It was reviewed in that, and it got 3 Ks in Kerrang, and they said this is a load of old rubbish. It's on Geffen. What are Geffen doing? So I was like, right, I'm going to go and buy it. I went and bought it, and the reviewer was completely incorrect. It's an amazing album, and it was absolutely brilliant. And the reason I bought it was because there was a picture of all 3 of them standing there in suits, and they looked really interesting, and they all had medallions as well. After that middle of that, I don't think I can really take any more, to be honest.
Brilliant. Horace has spoken. So this week, Horace, I sent you a metal record that's just been released. And I think this record is probably going to take the metal world by storm, at least for the next few months, if not the whole summer and the rest of the year. And that is Posthuman Next Gen by Bring Me the Horizon.
Yeah.
I mean, from an audio engineer point of view, I could spend a whole episode talking about this album. It's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, we all know the band. They've been on quite a journey, but a musical journey. But I think they may have reached their zenith with this record. I think this may well be their finest hour. They're really good musicians. They write really good songs, catchy metal songs. But I think the reason they've finally reached the summit and their zenith on this record is due to a man called Zach Savini, who produced it and mixed it. What can I say about him? I think he's probably my very most favourite metal mixing engineer at the moment. And this album is chock full of his creativity. It's quintessential Savini, really. It's got his signature massive sounding drums, but I know he spends a lot of time doing. His vocal productions are always really strong. And the transitions are really something on this record. It's full of this contrast from light to dark, soft to heavy, and vice versa. It's really something. And I'm really glad that they chose to go with him to make this album, because he does a lot of metal stuff, but he's also a really accomplished pop producer, and he's merged the two production genres beautifully on this album, and it really shows and it really shines. And I'm not going to go too much more off on one about this record. Suffice to say, I just think it's absolutely fantastic, and I know it's been met with unanimous positivity since they released it. Really, just a real banger. I think this may go down as a classic probably in years to come, an absolute genre classic of its time. So look, Horace, I think, you know, we all know you have a particular acerbic opinion when it comes to certain musical genres. And although this might not be, this genre of music may not be completely 100% up your street, I would defy you not to find at least something to admire in the entire creative process of this absolute monster of a record. So I guess without further ado, it's now time for
Roger the Horace's album review.
So my only question to you really, Horace, is what did you make of it?
To me, it sounded like somebody throwing a working chainsaw down a lift shaft.
Oh, You've been listening to Backstage Pass with myself, James Maverick, and Rob Newsom, aka Roger the Horace. If you want to get in touch with us lemons or ask us a question to discuss on the show, please do get in touch via Instagram by using our handle, which is @BSPpod, or by sending us a direct email to bsppod@protonmail.com. This podcast is brought to you by Maverick Audio and produced by me. If you'd like your podcast or any other production produced, then visit my website at www.maverickaudio.co.uk and message me via the contact form. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until the next time. I really, really want a Frank Boff t-shirt.